She was there, scrubbing the floor of the main lobby, an almost invisible figure at Global Logistics Management, or GLM as they called it. The cleaning crew for most was just part of the scenery, coming in after hours, pushing carts, cleaning desks. But on a busy Monday morning in downtown New York, the invisible became unforgettable. Richard Miller, the CEO of GLM, was on his way to the 14th floor when a voice stopped him. It wasn't just any voice. It was Russian, fluent, crystal clear. He remembered hearing Russian with that clarity only in tense negotiations in Moscow. He thought it might be one of the international sales representatives, but then he saw her. A woman in the burgundy cleaning uniform, short, curly hair pulled back. She was calmly speaking with a confused gentleman, gesturing and indicating the way to the elevators, all in Russian. Richard squinted. He'd seen her before in the hallways, always polite, quiet, avoiding eye contact unless spoken to. He didn't even know her name, and there she was, effortlessly translating and explaining building logistics in a language most Americans could barely pronounce. He approached slowly. When she finished the conversation in Russian, she turned to a delivery person. "You can leave it here at the reception, please," she said, switching to impeccable English. The delivery person blinked, surprised. Immediately after, with the same naturalness, she turned to a supplier and informed him in German, pointing with a slight smile. "Der Conference-Raum B east of Undereit Meinherr," explaining that Conference Room B was on the other side. Richard's jaw tightened, not from anger, but from a pang of guilt. He had worked in global logistics for over 2 decades, led international expansions, hired translators. And here, in his own building, the most linguistically talented person he'd met in months was cleaning restrooms, just 2 floors below. He stepped forward, more curious than authoritative. "Excuse me?" he asked. She turned, surprised but composed. "Yes, Mr. Miller." He gave a slight smile. "That was Russian, right? And you speak it fluently?" "Yes, sir," she nodded. "And English, German, French, Japanese, Italian, Arabic, and I communicate well in ASL. Oh, and I read Latin, but I don't really count that one." Richard blinked. 9 languages, including native Portuguese. There was no pride in her tone, no arrogance, just the truth, straight as a beam of light. He stared at her, trying to process that a cleaning employee in his building, a woman who silently scrubbed floors every night, was a sort of walking polyglot. "What's your name?" he finally asked. "Maria Oliveira." "Ms. Maria, are you free for a few minutes?" "Now?" "Yes. I'd like to talk to you in my office." He noticed a flicker of hesitation, not fear, but that automatic reflex of someone accustomed to being ignored or underestimated. She nodded slowly. "All right." He pressed the elevator button, holding the door for her. Inside the elevator, silence hung for a moment. "I've worked here for 13 years, she said suddenly. As they ascended to the executive floor, he turned to her. "I never thought I'd be invited up." He gave a small, contained smile. You might be surprised how quickly things can change, but he had no idea how much was about to change, neither for her nor for him. The elevator chimed. Maria stepped out first. Her quiet shoes on the polished wooden floor of the executive hallway smelled of a mix of citrus and leather, the smell of money, if one were to define it. Richard's assistant looked up in astonishment to see Maria beside him. He didn't explain, just gestured for her to pass. Once inside the glass-walled office, he gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Please, have a seat." She sat carefully, hands crossed in her lap, eyes slowly scanning the room. She wasn't impressed, just observant. A large world map hung behind him, each country marked with colourful pins. On the side, table, a tray with espresso cups, a photo of his 2 daughters, and a dusty award from a trade conference in Brussels. Richard sat across from her, leaning slightly. "So, Miss Maria, I'll be honest. I didn't expect to have this conversation today." She gave a small nod, her posture still firm, her face unreadable. But I just heard you speak 3 languages, as if you were changing channels on TV. And I need to understand how someone like you ends up working here, cleaning floors." For a second, she didn't answer. Her eyes darted to the window, then back to him. "Do you have time for the truth?" "I wouldn't have asked if I didn't," she sighed. "All right then." She rubbed her palms together, as if warming up the words. "I was born in a small town in rural Brazil, an only child. My father was a mechanic, my mother a nursing assistant. They didn't have much, but they worked hard. They valued education as if it were a religion. I got a full scholarship to the Federal University. Studied literature. I was halfway through my master's when my mother got sick." She paused. "I went home to take care of her. Then my father passed away. A stroke. 6 months later, everything fell apart after that." She tilted her head slightly, as if rewinding memories before recounting them. "I had a daughter with no money, no partner who stayed. So I worked whatever came my way. Supermarket, nursing home, temporary odd jobs, until a cleaning supervisor here offered me the night shift. It allowed me to pick up my daughter from school, pay the electricity bill. That's how I got here." Richard watched her, unblinking, just listening. "But I never stopped learning languages. I borrowed books, listened to recordings, read newspapers in several different languages, just to keep myself sharp. It's what I do. It's the only thing I do that makes me feel like I still matter." Her voice didn't waver. It wasn't rehearsed or poetic, just simple. "Most people never asked," she added. "They saw the uniform and presumed." That last word hung in the air. Presumed. Richard leaned back in his chair. The weight of her story settled in his chest like a stone. She cleared her throat. "Look, Mr. Miller, I'm not saying this for anyone to feel bad. I'm not bitter. Life happened. I did what I had to do. I still do. You asked, and that's the answer." He let out a slow breath. Maria Oliveira was brilliant. That was obvious now, but she wasn't asking for pity, not even a handout. She was giving the truth. Clean, clear, and a little desolate. "Have you ever thought about doing something else?" he asked. She shrugged. "Sometimes, but it's hard to dream when the rent is due." Silence fell again, but it was different now, denser, filled with something unsaid, yet powerful. Richard picked up his notepad, scribbling a few lines. "What are you writing?" she asked. Her voice still calm, but a little curious now. He looked at her. Ideas, but one idea in particular, was already forming in his head. And it wasn't small. The conversation stayed with him all day, even during budget reviews and calls with suppliers. Richard Miller's mind kept returning to that morning, to Maria Oliveira, her calm voice, and the quiet way she listed so many languages, as if they were nothing. That kind of fluency doesn't just happen. It takes years of discipline, curiosity, and passion. By 3:45 p.m., he left the executive floor and took the elevator down to the building service level. He wanted to see something. For himself. Downstairs, the air was warmer. The walls were dingy white, scratched by carts and boots. He passed maintenance crews, cafeterias, stacks of water bottles, and finally reached the cleaning supply room. He spotted Maria through the open doorway, restocking microfiber cloths on a metal shelf. "May I bother you again?" he asked, stepping inside. She turned, a little startled. "You came all the way down here?" He smiled. "I couldn't stop thinking about our conversation. Listen, I have a favor to ask." She wiped her hands on her uniform blouse. "What kind of favor?" "There's a meeting upstairs. A group from our Hamburg office arrived early, and our translator cancelled last minute. Can you help us?" She hesitated for just a second. "German?" "Yes, I can help." Minutes later, they were in conference room 4C. 4 German executives sat awkwardly, checking their phones. Maria entered discreetly, nodded, and began speaking in smooth, confident German. Richard watched as the entire room shifted. Shoulders relaxed, eye contact intensified. She wasn't just translating, she was building a bridge, making people feel seen. When one of the visitors made a joke in German, Maria responded with a laugh and another joke that made everyone burst into laughter. Richard didn't understand a word, but he understood the connection. After 20 minutes, the meeting ended. One of the executives turned to him and said in English, "She's better than anyone we've worked with this year. Where did you find her?" Richard looked at Maria, who was already stacking empty cups on a tray. "Right here," he said back to the hallway. He caught up to her. "Have you done professional translation before?" She shook her head. "Only helped people in hospitals, public offices, things like that. No certification, no time to study. My daughter needed me more." Richard nodded. "And where is she now?" "She's 26, a nurse in Los Angeles, paid for college herself, stubborn like her mother." They both smiled and, for a second, it didn't seem like CEO and cleaner, just two people talking about life. They returned to the service level, where Maria clocked back in. She had 2 more floors to clean before her shift ended, but before she left, she said something that stuck with him. "I didn't do anything special today." He looked at her, eyebrows raised. "That's not how it seemed to me." She gave a small smile and walked away. That night, Richard sat in his car for a long time before driving home. He thought about everything. The pressure to grow the company, investor meetings, endless discussions about diversity and untapped talent. All this time they had been looking outside, recruiting globally, seeking new blood. But sometimes the gold is already in your backyard. And when you realize that, the real question becomes, what are you going to do about it? The next morning, Maria's badge beeped at the wrong time. She had just finished cleaning the east lobby when her supervisor, Ron, tapped her shoulder with a look that wasn't exactly angry, but wasn't normal either. "Hey, Maria, Mr. Miller asked to see you again." She blinked. "Did I do something wrong?" Ron shook his head. "He didn't say, just told me to bring you upstairs." She wiped her hands on a towel and followed the same path she had taken the day before. Only this time, everyone in the building seemed to notice her. People she passed looked up. Some whispered. One of the receptionists even gave her a polite smile, as if she knew something Maria didn't. When she entered the executive suite, Richard was by the window, drinking black coffee and looking at the city skyline. "Come in," he said, still not turning. She stood quietly near the door until he faced her. "I've been thinking," he said, placing his mug on a coaster, "about wasted talent. How many people never get a chance? Not because they're not good, but because no one looks twice." Maria said nothing. She didn't trust easy praise. She'd seen too many people talk big and do little. "I want to create a new position," he continued, "one that didn't exist before. Something this company badly needs, even if we didn't know it." Now she frowned. "For what? Cultural advisor for international affairs? Alguien que pueda hablar las lenguas, leer entre líneas, tratar con visitantes, proveedores, documentos, todos los puntos de contacto globales con los que estamos constantemente tropezando." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "You are qualified, probably. More than most people on our leadership team, honestly. And you've already proven you can handle it with grace, patience, and intelligence." She stared at him, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Is this serious?" "As serious as it gets. I don't have a college degree." "You have something better, life experience, commitment, and fluency in so many languages. Do you think I care about a piece of paper?" She shifted her weight, still uncertain. "Why me?" He looked directly at her. "Because I saw you solve 3 problems in 3 languages before 9 a.m. yesterday. And because I'm tired of overlooking people like you, people doing double the work for half the credit." Maria crossed her arms. "You know what people will say. I don't care." She stared at him for a long moment, then let out a slow sigh. "I've never had an office job," she said. "Never held a title. You learn fast. I don't have a wardrobe for this kind of thing. I'll ask HR to release a wardrobe allowance." She gave a dry laugh. "You've thought of everything, huh?" "I'm trying." A long pause stretched between them. Then Maria softly asked, "And my shift downstairs? Who will replace me?" Richard smiled. "We'll find someone, but no one can replace you." For a long time neither spoke. She looked at her hands, then back at him. "Are you sure this isn't some kind of favor?" He shook his head. "This is long overdue recognition." She bit her lip, her eyes glistening, but blinked back the tears before they fell. "All right then," she said, her voice firm. "Let's see what I can do." He extended his hand. She shook it. It wasn't just a handshake. It was history being rewritten. But what neither of them expected was how everyone else in the building would react. By Wednesday, the news had traveled faster than the elevators. Maria Oliveira, the night shift cleaner, had been promoted to an executive-level position. Nobody knew the full story. Just rumors that she spoke a bunch of languages, that the president himself had picked her, that she might have some kind of secret past, maybe government work, maybe even undercover. Gossip bounced from cubicle to cubicle, from meeting room to meeting room. Some people were curious, others smiled and said, "Good for her." But not everyone was cheering. In the break room, 2 marketing assistants leaned over their salads. "I'm just saying," one whispered. "I have a master's in international business, and I've been waiting for a promotion for 2 years. This woman was scrubbing urinals last week." Her friend shrugged. "Maybe she knows something we don't." "Oh, please!" It's Richard trying to look progressive, filling a quota. That same energy seeped into boardrooms and Slack messages. Silent resentment mixed with confusion. People weren't used to promotions coming from outside, the usual hierarchical ladder. Maria felt it the second she stepped into her new office on the 12th floor. It was modest, just a desk, a plant, and a computer she hadn't touched. But to her, it felt like another planet. When HR finished onboarding her, she asked if she could keep her night uniform, not to wear, just to remember. That afternoon, she met with Victor, the international operations manager. He walked in with a clipboard and narrowed eyes, didn't shake her hand, didn't sit down. "So, you're the new advisor?" He said it like a joke wrapped in politeness. Maria looked up. "That's what I was told." "Do you have experience in corporate environments?" She smiled. "Only on the outside, looking inward." He didn't laugh. "I have reports from Italy, contracts from our Dubai partners, and a huge problem with suppliers in Tokyo. Do you think you can handle it?" Maria stood up. "I'll need a few hours to review, but yes." Victor dropped the folder on her desk and left. Later that night, Richard stopped by her office. "How was the first day?" She exhaled, leaning back in her chair. "I've had worse." He smiled. "Victor was rough on you." "He doesn't scare me." "I figured." She paused and added, "But can I ask you something?" "Anything?" "Why now? Because you could have just given me a bonus and moved on." He leaned against the doorframe. "Because I saw myself in you." She raised an eyebrow. "Were you a cleaner?" "No, but I was largely overlooked. I didn't come from money either. My father fixed cars in a small town nobody even remembers the name of. I worked 3 jobs during college. People thought I didn't belong in rooms like this." Maria nodded slowly. "Now you're the one who decides who comes in." He nodded back. "Exactly." There was a moment of silence before Maria looked at the file on her desk. "I'll be honest. I'm nervous." "Good. It means you care." She looked up again. "Some people are going to hate this. They'll get over it or they won't. Either way, we're moving forward." Richard straightened up. "You have a story, Maria. A real story. And now you have a platform." Then he turned to leave. As the door closed behind him, Maria looked around her office. She remembered the years she cried in bathroom stalls during lunch breaks, the nights she came home with aching feet and barely had the energy to heat soup, the birthdays she missed, the promotions she saw go to people who didn't even say good morning to her. She opened her desk drawer and placed her old cleaning badge inside, not to forget, but to remember exactly what it took to get there. But this story was no longer just hers, and the spotlight was about to shine much brighter. By the end of the week, Maria's nameplate was installed outside her office, black letters on brushed steel. Maria Oliveira, Cultural Advisor, International Affairs. It looked official, clean, permanent. The news had spread formally this time. The company-wide email landed in inboxes Friday morning, sent by Richard himself. It was short, clear, and carried weight. He explained her role, her experience, and most importantly, her value. He didn't present it as charity or a feel-good gesture. He made it clear she was the best person for the job, period. But that didn't stop the noise. Some managers grumbled quietly, others softened when they saw her in action. She led conversations with foreign clients better than translation software. She corrected translation errors in old contracts that had cost the company money for years and never showed off. She just worked quietly, efficiently, better than anyone expected. On Monday, Maria was called into a meeting with a delegation from Morocco. The company's expansion into North Africa had been stalled for months due to communication breakdowns and distrust. She walked into the room in a soft beige blazer, sat at the table, and introduced herself in fluent Moroccan Arabic. The room shifted. You could feel the change. People leaned in, listened, because when someone speaks your language, you don't just hear words, you hear respect. After the meeting, one of the Moroccan partners approached her privately. He gently touched his chest, a traditional sign of gratitude. "No one has ever done this for us," he said. "Not in our language, not like this." Maria nodded. "You matter. That's all." Midweek, Richard made another move. He renamed the company's main training room, where all new hires gathered for orientation and where mid-level leaders held workshops. The plaque outside the door was removed. In its place, Maria Oliveira Room. No grand announcement, no party, just a discreet plaque and a change. That meant more than flowers or cake ever could. Later that afternoon, Richard stood outside the room, watching a new group of interns walk in. He heard one of them whisper, "Who is Maria Oliveira?" A senior employee replied, "She's someone who reminded this place that greatness doesn't always come in a suit and tie." That same day, Maria found a sealed envelope on her desk. No sender, just her name handwritten in block letters. Inside was a note that read, "I used to think I'd be invisible, in forever, but today I felt a little taller because of you. Thank you." No signature, just proof that people were watching, people who needed to see what was possible. Maria stood there looking at the words, her throat tightening. She didn't cry. She didn't need to, because that was the moment she realized this wasn't just a job, it was a door. But not every door stays open without a fight. And someone was already planning to push back. The backlash wasn't long in coming. On Thursday evening, Maria was called to a meeting, not by Richard, but by someone higher up. Eleanor Quinn, a senior board director who had come from Washington, D.C., had been with the company since the 90s. Impeccable suits, even sharper tongue. Maria walked into the small conference room on the 17th floor, where Eleanor waited with a stack of papers and a cold stare. "Sit down," she said without looking up. Maria sat. Eleanor tapped her pen twice. "So, Ms. Oliveira, I've reviewed your file. You have no college degree, no prior corporate training, and no management certifications." Maria didn't flinch. "Correct?" Eleanor crossed her hands. "You were a cleaner here 3 weeks ago." "I was." She leaned back in her chair. "Help me understand how someone with your background is now handling high-level international affairs." Maria held her gaze. "Because I speak the languages, I understand the cultures. I've already fixed 2 supplier contracts and cleared a 3-month backlog on our Morocco agreement. I also helped secure a verbal agreement with our Japanese partners that legal is finalizing next week." Eleanor pursed her lips. "Do you think this company should be run based on instinct and charm?" Maria smiled slightly. "No, ma'am. I think it should be run based on results." Eleanor blinked. It was the first time Maria had seen her hesitate. "I don't need to be liked." Maria added. But I need to be useful. And I am. Eleanor stood up and slowly closed the folder. You're a gamble. I'm used to. In that, Maria said softly, my entire life has been won. When the meeting ended, Maria didn't go back to her office immediately. She left the building and sat on a bench across the street, looking at the glass tower where she now worked. For so many years, she had passed that building wearing the same uniform, carrying cleaning supplies, wondering if anyone saw her. Now everyone saw her, and some didn't like it. She pulled out her phone and called her daughter. Hi, Mom, her daughter answered. Everything all right? Maria hesitated, then nodded to herself. Yes, I just needed to hear your voice. Are you sure? I am. They talked for a few minutes, mostly about nothing. Shopping, her daughter's dog, a new movie she wanted to see. But just hearing her laugh calmed Maria. After they hung up, she sat in silence, then stood up, walked back across the street, and took the elevator to her floor. The next morning, news of the meeting with Eleanor Quinn somehow spread, and to everyone's surprise, Maria didn't back down. She showed up early, spoke at a team meeting, took a call with the Germany office without needing a translator. Calm, sharp, unperturbed. That same day, a handwritten note appeared on the whiteboard outside her office. We see you. No name. Just 3 words that meant the world. In the following weeks, something strange happened. People started seeking her out, not just for translation, but for advice, guidance, confidence. She became the go-to person before, presenting an idea. She sat with interns and gave them tips before big presentations and never talked down to anyone. One of the interns, a shy kid named Alex, asked her, "How did you learn all those languages?" She smiled. "One word at a time, just like you will." Maria wasn't just doing her job, she was changing the culture. One afternoon, Richard joined her for coffee in the break room. "I've been hearing good things," he said. She took a sip from her cup. "I've been trying to ignore the bad." "Buns, you're making noise." She looked at him. "Is that good?" He smiled. "Around here it means you're doing something right." They were silent for a moment. "You know what?" he added. "I've been thinking about starting an internal talent training program, especially for people who work in non-administrative roles. There are probably more Marias in this building." She nodded. "There are. They just haven't been seen yet." He looked at her. "Want to help me build it?" She smiled. "I've already started in my head." By the end of the month, the pilot program was launched, a new initiative called Internal Voice, designed to give workers from all departments access to language training, leadership mentorship, and visibility across divisions. It was Maria's idea, and it took off. Eventually, she was invited to speak at a logistics leadership conference in Chicago, where she told her story. Not as a motivational tale, but as a reality check. "I was never just a cleaner," she told the crowd. "I was fluent, I was capable, I was ready, but no one ever looked hard enough to see. So, the next time you pass someone without a prominent title, ask yourself, what are you really missing?" The room fell silent, and then erupted in a standing ovation. On her way out, a young man approached her with tears in his eyes. "My mom is a domestic worker," he said, "and she speaks 5 languages. I used to be ashamed to say that." Maria touched his arm. "Never be ashamed of where you come from. The only thing to be ashamed of is remaining blind to brilliance." She walked out of that building taller than she had ever been in her life. Not because of the applause, not because of the promotion, but because she hadn't changed who she was to fit the role. She brought herself, every layer of her story with her, and that made all the difference. Never assume you know someone's worth based on what they wear, where they work, or what their resume says. Talent has no dress code. Intelligence needs no permission, and brilliance can walk right past you wearing a badge and holding a mop. If you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or ignored, keep going. The right person will see you. And when that happens, don't be afraid to take your seat at the table, Better yet, bring a few more chairs with you.